Hi, I'm Lee LaBay, and I am a past life regressionist, hypnotherapist, author of several books. And I get a lot of questions from people about what it's like to experience a past life regression. So the answer is rather complex, as everybody is going to have a slightly different experience with that. And let me kind of give you some ideas about the variations. So I do teach hypnotherapy programs. I teach people how to be hypnotherapists and professional past life regressionists. I have seen clients over the past 23 plus years, many more years actually, doing past life regression. So I've seen a lot of people go through the process, and I've also experienced dozens of past lives of my own. So even my own experiences vary from time to time. To answer the question, what is it like to experience a past life regression? Well, as I've talked about before, we take in our experiences through our various sensory modalities, and we have five senses, some others beyond that, but let's call it five in the physical realm. And of those five, there are three that we typically are accessing when we are storing memories and recalling them: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So visual, we remember what we see, we remember colors, we intake our information and store it in pictures, movies, things that we're seeing. Auditory, we are remembering the song that was playing in the background. We remember the conversations, maybe the humming in the background or the birds flying overhead. And then kinesthetically, we're taking in or remembering the experience by how we felt about it, emotionally or physically. So if there was touch or tickling or itching or a pain, or if we were touched emotionally and there was sadness or fear or excitement and happiness. And so we use a combination of those three typically, but there will be a modality that we lead with. So some people who are very, very visual will talk really rapidly, will explain things in pictures, a lot of visual references. Also with visual, people will look up when trying to remember something. With auditory, we tend to look to the side. What was it that they said? Or what was the music playing? I'm trying to listen to that. We might also speak in terms of sound, rhythm, beats, tones, that sort of thing. And then with kinesthetic, we tend to look down when we're remembering, and we're accessing there. The people who are mostly kinesthetic will talk a lot slower. It's almost like, if you ask them a question, they take it in and kind of move it around in their belly and then come back up and give you an answer. So it's a lot slower process. So one of the ways that we remember past lives is through one of those channels. So somebody who is very visual is going to have pictures or almost like a movie unfolding, and they're going to have a lot of visual that they can describe and seeing the scenes and that sort of thing. If they're auditory, they might remember languages or conversations that were happening at the time. And kinesthetic, they may not be getting a lot of pictures. It may be a lot more about, I feel like I'm being chased, or I'm, going off to battle, but I'm feeling these things, rather than seeing the scene itself. So we may remember by our modalities, our sensory modalities. The other experience that happens is, it can be just like snippets. A face appears, or gosh, I'm now thinking about a cathedral, or, something like that that's happening, or I have this sense of there being a wedding. It can be just like little snippets. And as you practice, you'll get better at enlarging those snippets into vignettes or into full-length movies. In the beginning, we might just be getting flashes or indications, hints. Maybe you're looking at a painting or listening to some music, and it's taking your mind into scenes from another place or another time, or events that happened, or maybe there's a deep sadness or fear or longing or love that comes out of those sensory triggers that are making the past life happen. When we're remembering a past life, we can't always count on it being completely accurate the first time we remember. In the same way that if you were remembering what you did yesterday, maybe you leave something out, or maybe you perceived it in a way that somebody else that was there may say, well, that's not the way I experienced that event. If you've ever been a witness of a car accident, for instance, the two witnesses may have completely different stories about what happened, or maybe you talk with a family member about something that happened in your childhood, and they're remembering it completely differently, even though they were there as well. So it just really depends on how we've taken it in, what our context is during the event itself, and how we have stored that. And then even our own perspectives from this life, how we feel about certain issues or how we see things have changed over the decades, over the centuries, over the millennium. And so now as we view those lifetimes, our perspective of them could be different as well. How we perceive what was going on, or the politics of the day, or the customs, or the traditions of that culture. So we'll see it differently that way. Also, some people live kind of removed from their life, what we say out of body. So even in today's experiences, perhaps they're feeling like they're just observing their life as they move through it, rather than participating and really being in the midst of the experience of it. So when you go back to remember that as a past life, you may feel a little more distanced or removed from those experiences, which is an important reason why I work with people to reconnect with their life a little more strongly. Because if, through trauma, through extraordinary events, maybe they don't want to feel things emotionally, maybe they were traumatized or abused, PTSD of some sort, they just found it safer to really kind of disconnect from their physical body, or their first person experience of life and the experiences of life, these events. And so by stepping back as a form of safety, of protection, they're actually going to hamper their ability to remember life events very accurately. Another factor in the difficulty of accessing those past life memories is when you're actually in the event. In other words, if you are in this present day going through some type of experience, and yet your mind is a million miles away. Maybe you're driving home from work. I think we've all had this. You're driving home from work and you're thinking about the day, and maybe you're upset about something that happened at work, and you're nervous about something that's coming up, and you're worried about your kids, and you're thinking about your grocery list, and all the things that are filling our minds with all sorts of busyness. And we arrive home And we think, oh my God, I don't even remember getting here. Well, we have not really taken in the memories of those experiences, the experience of driving home. And, maybe you think, well, who cares? I don't need that experience in my memory. But maybe that's happening on your family vacation, or maybe it's happening when you're taking a walk in the woods and you're out exploring nature, but your mind is just thinking about all your troubles and all your regrets from the past and your worries about the future. And you haven't really been observing or taking in the experience of being out there in nature. And again, so, if that's happening in a given lifetime, when you regress back to that lifetime and you try to see those events, they may not really be there in that form, because you might just be remembering all the things that your mind was busy with and not really the experience of living that life. Some people who are very, very accustomed to meditating, and people who are really, maybe they read a lot of imaginative sci-fi novels, or are artistic, that sort of thing, where they're used to going up into that imaginative state, they are much more likely to have a full experience. They're so used to bringing in that imaginative state and allowing themselves that relaxation into that creative and generative activity of now applying that to a past life regression. If you're more linear thinking and analytical, and you rely on being able to physically touch something in order to know that it's true, it's going to be a little more difficult. So in my office, I have different techniques that help you to go back over into that I have techniques that help you to go back over to that imaginative side to allow that flow to happen. And for people who are really analytical, there are some techniques where we can separate that analytical part out and allow you to really swim in that imaginative pool. But one of the things that I like to remind very analytical people is, first of all, hopefully there's a trust involved that it's going to be okay to just go out there and be imaginative, that for this 1 or 2 hours, it's not going to matter. We don't have to be vigilant and in control. We can just kind of go out and play in the imaginative field. But what I try to remind my analytical clients is that when you're analytical, you are simply moving through all the facts and information that you already have in your conscious mind, things that you already are aware of. And you're just going over and over and over them and analyzing and looking at all the details of that. In order to have more information, I ask that part of the client that is analytical if it would be willing to allow the client to have this freedom to go into that imaginative side and to really play and come up with things. And again, we may not really remember everything completely accurately. And if that part is willing to do that, we're going to have even more information, new information for them to analyze. So if we can go and play and bring in all of this imaginative information, new things to chew on, then that analytical part can come in and then have some really interesting things to analyze and look at in detail. So I had started to say why we may not remember everything accurately. If you, if you think about it, and I say, what did you do on your 15th birthday or your 17th birthday? Or what did you do 4th of July in 1996 or something like that? Maybe you say, well, it was like this. And then you add some information. Oh, well, this also happened. Well, maybe that didn't really happen, or this person was there and not that person. And over time, you kind of piece it together, and maybe you ask a few people and say, okay, what do you remember? And let's put it together. But now, when we go back and we're remembering past lives, there's something in us that says, well, I'm not going to accept any of these memories unless I know for sure it's absolutely correct. And that is actually pretty unfair to us as experiencers. You know, if I was doing that, it would be unfair to me because I can't even remember what I did a week ago completely accurately without really examining it and putting it back together. So now when we go back 100 years or 1,000 years through all these cycles of life and death, it's really not fair for me to expect myself to be able to remember it completely accurately. So it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to just let it flow. Okay to just experience it, see what comes up, and then go back over it and go, okay, what else do I know? How can I fill in the story? How can I fill in more of the gaps? Is this completely accurate, or is it slightly different from that? And we'll get, we'll piece it together. We will, understand that lifetime a lot better. So I hope that's helped. Um, One other point about what it's like to experience it. Again, it's different perhaps in different people's offices. Certainly if you're meditating and remembering a past life, it is that experience. If you're in my office and I'm guiding you through that experience, to begin with, we're going to go into a meditative state. So I do a hypnotic induction. I take you into a safe space where you can really feel free to be yourself. We get an empowerment symbol, which is this beautiful energetic gift that is very specific to you and very specific to your goal in the session at that time. And then we may go into a sacred healing space. So there's different levels. And really all of that is just to get you really, really relaxed, get your imagination flowing, and get your mind focused on our goal of achieving a past life. But quite honestly, all of that part takes about 10 minutes. It's not really a long, extended um, process to get into that past life state. As I've said in other videos, typically we should just be able to remember it. All right. So we hopefully don't have to go too far just to get to that state where we can, in fact, start remembering it. And then, one of the devices that I use, and there are so many ways to do this, but I have people imagine going down a hall. There are doorways on each side, each one leading to a past life that would be relevant to our goal for that day. And then they step through the door and then they determine if they're indoors or outdoors. And that's just a place to launch. And so then they are there and they're describing to me the environment that they're in and what's happening. Are they there alone or with other people? Just what is happening there, right? And we move ahead in time and we might look at where do you sleep that night. And a lot of that is just really getting them deeper into those memories in the beginning. And then when they get up in the morning, then we start to see what is that life like? Where do they go to work? How do they start their day? What is their aim for the day? What's on the agenda? What are they going to do? Do they go to school? Do they go to work? Are they living with a family? Are they married? Do they have children? That sort of thing. Or are they partnered with someone? And what are their hobbies? What are their interests? And then life in the day. So what's happening and what's going on? What are the major events? And we just go through the lifetime to the end. And then if it's relevant or the person wants to experience the end and beyond the time between lives, then we'll go up and they can experience what it feels like to lift off of that body, to separate from the physical and what's happening out there between lives. And we do some analysis of what did they learn in that lifetime that they've just experienced. What, how are they going to integrate that into who they are now in this lifetime? And, any lessons that are involved. Sometimes there's healing that we do while we're in the past life. And sometimes there are conversations that we have afterwards. I mean, when they're in the astral, looking at that life, and we're kind of processing at that point, looking at that and maybe setting up a conversation so that my client is now having a conversation with the person who they were in that other lifetime. And so they share wisdom and support, and then we integrate that into who they are now in this lifetime. And then maybe we move up into a different lifetime, or we move to the point just before coming into this incarnation, so we can understand what were the factors that were being examined, or were there any, did they just jump into this body, or were they really looking at other opportunities? What was their relationship with these parents or this family? Why did they choose this time, this family, this location? What did they have in mind to accomplish in this lifetime? If that's part of their goal for our session that day. And we can do several lifetimes, sometimes several lifetimes in an hour, certainly several lifetimes in 2 hours, depending on the level of flow, the level of detail that they're getting for each of these lifetimes. But with that information, they can go and journal afterwards when they go home, or continue to meditate on those. And a lot of the detail will continue to fill in for them over time. Or we can schedule another session and then go back and look at those same lifetimes now that they've had time to digest, look at those same lifetimes and review them again and fill in a little bit, or continue to look at new lifetimes. I hope that's helped you to understand what it's like. I think the last point is that throughout that whole process, my clients are fully aware that they're in my room, they're speaking with me because we're in a dialogue. They can completely take care of themselves. They can say, I don't want to go any further. I don't want to say, I know what I'm seeing, but I don't want to talk about it. Or, generally they're just really telling me everything that they're experiencing. But they're fully capable of taking care of themselves, or saying, I really need a bathroom break, or I need some water, or maybe they start crying and, they can get some, or I give them some Kleenex. And then I can give them some tissues and, whatever it is that they need. So even though they're in this meditative state, I actually like to use a metaphor. If you wake up from having a dream that was, really intense, and you call your friend up on the phone and you say, oh my gosh, I had this dream, and you start relaying the dream, and, you can still feel the emotions and you can see the pictures of it, and you recall the visuals, the sensations perhaps, and you're telling your friend all about this dream. It's very similar, because when you're telling about the dream, you have the visuals. You might even still be emotionally aroused about the dream, but yet at the same time, that you're talking to your friend on the phone. That you're, in your room or your living room or you're outside, wherever you are. You know what all of that is, but yet you're completely connected to the images and memory of that dream. And so the same thing when you're experiencing a past life, you're talking to me, you're in my office, what's going on. Maybe there's a dog that barks outside in the neighborhood somewhere. You might even be aware of that, or you may be so focused that that doesn't even bother you. But it's not like the hypnotherapist, or at least in my office, it's not like I have any control over you or that you're going to suddenly do something odd. Yeah, some people say, well, I'm afraid that if I die in that lifetime, then I'll die here. There's no connection to it. Um, you know, not at all. That's not going to happen. I have people go through the death scene all the time in my office, and there's no um, physical repercussions of that here in this body. So, anyway, it's a very relaxing and enjoyable experience and enlightening because you're going to learn so much about yourself. So I hope that you experience a past life soon. I have some audios and videos that guide you through it. The best experience is to come on in here to the office and have it guided very particularly for you, because I can really hold that space and help you to navigate those memories. And certainly if something difficult comes up, then I'm there to help you as well. But I hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you later. Thank you.